Unlike protein and fat, carbohydrates are not essential macronutrients, meaning you do not need them to survive. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have their benefit. Carbohydrates come in many forms. There's monosaccharides, or single sugar molecules. This includes glucose, fructose, and galactose. There's disaccharides, which are two sugars linked together, such as table sugar or sucrose, where the glucose molecule is linked with a fructose molecule. Oligosaccharides is a broader category that encompasses short-chain saccharides and includes disaccharides. And finally, polysaccharides are complex carbohydrates such as starches. All carbohydrates, when digested, are broken down and enter the circulation as monosaccharides or glucose. Basically, all carbs, other than fiber, wind up as sugar in the body after digestion. Glucose can be stored as glycogen in the liver and muscle for use when required, and is the required fuel for high-intensity aerobic exercise. While carbs are not essential, the body has still developed unbelievably comprehensive systems involving blood glucose regulation and transport to tissues. When carbs are ingested, the pancreas releases a hormone called insulin, which acts to lower blood glucose by shuttling glucose into tissues such as muscle, fat, liver, and others. Shuttling glucose into tissue thus lowers the glucose levels in the blood. This is good because when blood sugar levels are too high, they can be toxic to the blood vessels in certain cells. Certain hormones can also increase blood glucose, such as glucagon and cortisol, which is good because when blood sugar is too low, nausea, fainting, coma, and even death can occur. In healthy people, this system works very well. In type 1 diabetics, the system is drastically disrupted because the pancreas doesn't produce insulin, which can cause blood sugar to skyrocket unless controlled by external insulin use. In type 2 diabetes, insulin can still be produced, but the cells become insensitive to it and it doesn't have the effect it should, which also leads to a risk in blood glucose levels. Interestingly, even though carbs have gotten a bad rap in recent years for reasons previously discussed, carbs contribute very little to body fat stores. The process of converting carbs to fat is called de novo lipogenesis, and under normal diet conditions, this occurs in a very small amount. Fats, or lipids, come in many forms such as fatty acids, oils, waxes, and steroids. Like protein, lipids are essential for our survival because our bodies cannot synthesize certain fats called essential fatty acids, or EFAs. Fats are involved in a variety of important processes in the body, including regulating membrane permeability, serving as a source of fat-soluble vitamins, and serving as a storage reservoir for energy. There are two main types of fatty acids: saturated fat, which are solid at room temperature, and unsaturated fat, which are liquid at room temperature. Under unsaturated fats, there is monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids. There are also trans fats, which are a type of unsaturated fat. These fats generally don't occur in nature, but occur when we try to make vegetable oils solid through a process called hydrogenation. We do this to create butter substitutes and to extend the shelf life of certain food products. At one point in time, it was thought that trans fats were healthier than saturated fats. Thus, everybody was eating margarine instead of butter. As you probably know, this is definitely not the case, as it was found that trans fat increases risk for heart disease and type 2 diabetes. It is still relatively up in the air whether saturated fat is harmful. Multiple recent meta-analyses on saturated fat point out that saturated fat and cholesterol probably aren't as awful as made out to be in the 70s and 80s, but there is probably an undefined amount of saturated fat and cholesterol intake that could pose harm. Therefore, the best options for fats appears to be polyunsaturated fatty acids, or PUFAs, which offer the most cardioprotective benefits. Salmon, olive oil, nuts, and seeds are all great sources of polyunsaturated fatty acids. We are not saying to avoid saturated fats altogether, just don't overdo it. Keeping fats at an optimal level is important for hormone balance. Research shows that if you lower your fat intake so much that it accounts for less than 20% of your daily caloric intake, your testosterone can drop, which is not beneficial for keeping lean body mass in men or women.